Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Carolyn Waters, the head librarian, and before we begin, just a few quick notes. First, if you have any cell phones or anything else that might disrupt the presentation, please turn them off now. Thank you. Also, you may already know that our friends from the Corner Bookstore are selling books by Donna Kaz, and I'm sure she'll be happy to sign them afterward. And finally, a big thank you to all of you who supported the library last year, including the annual appeal, which makes programs like tonight possible, so thank you. I think it is somehow fitting and appropriate that our first event of the new season, coming so soon after those really inspirational pictures from the women's marches on Saturday. It's the story of a woman turned survivor turned radical feminist. So I think it's somehow a very, very perfect sort of timing for this talk too. Unmasks, the new book by Donna Kaz, is a memoir of her life as a victim of domestic abuse, and it's also the story of an artist fed up with the sexism in the theater world, who puts on a mask and becomes a guerrilla girl. The Guerrilla Girls were and are active as an anonymous collective of artist activists promoting gender and racial equality. They don gorilla masks in public and adopt the names of historic women artists, such as Frida Kahlo, Alice Neal, and Aphra Behn, the pseudonym of our now unmasked Guerrilla Girl, Donna Kaz. Donna is a multi-genre writer and activist based in New York. She is the author of Performing Tribute, 9/11, The Wanderer, Waiting, Food the Musical, and Joan, voted Best Production of 2000 by the Scranton Times. Her alter ego, Aphra Behn, is a performer, playwright, producer, and the artistic director of Guerrilla Girls On Tour. For her work creating activist art, she has received the Yoko Ono Courage Award for the Arts, the Skowhegan Medal, and an Elizabeth George Foundation grant. Her screenplay, King Me, recently won a Boundary Stone Film Screenwriting Award. Please join me in welcoming Donna Kaz.
Thank you. 1995. I am awarded the Kydell Corporation Fellowship Residency at the Artist Colony Jurassic in Woodside, California. Back on the West Coast, I spent the month of August working on a brand new play in a private studio overlooking acres of secluded land next to Neil Young's cattle ranch, along with two other writers, two performance artists, a composer, and a visual artist. At the first communal dinner, I sit across from the visual artist, a woman from New York City. Between forkfuls of rice pilaf and sips of red wine, we discuss our work and the current state of women in the arts. As we compare notes, we agree that both the theater and the art world are blatantly sexist. Sensing my smoldering rage, as I recite the lack of women being produced on Broadway and beyond, she reaches into her bag and pulls out a copy of the newly published Confessions of the Guerrilla Girls. "Read this," she says. "What is it?" "Just read it. I will talk to you about it when you're done." That night, I pace the floor of my studio and devour every page of Confessions of the Guerrilla Girls. I get it. I so get it. I hear the message as if a hot mouth screams it dangerously close to my ear. Sexism is alive and well and living in the art world. Shout, the Guerrilla Girls. The gorilla mask wearing, mini-skirted, high-heeled, and totally badass Guerrilla Girls. A group of women artists who funnel their outrage at discrimination in museums and galleries into the creation of deft black and white posters that humorously state the sorry statistics surrounding women artists. Over 80% of the nudes in the paintings in the Met Museum are of women, but only 3% of those paintings were painted by women. The Guerrilla Girls conclude by asking if, in order to get to the Met, women have to get naked. The Guerrilla Girls week paste their posters all over Soho in the dead of night, slapping up posters on construction fences, post box and lampposts. They call themselves Eva Hess, Rosalba Carrera, Joanna Barnes, Lubov Popova, and other names that are not their own, but those of dead women artists who have struggled and created before them. They do this to avoid being accused of carrying out their actions to promote and float their own careers as artists. Their posters are funny and poignant and force you to rethink what you know about women artists and sexism. Soon everyone wants to know who they really are. I was told that for their first press conference, a member was sent out to buy gorilla disguises to cover their faces. This particular Guerrilla Girl was a very bad speller and came back with gorilla masks instead. The mistake turned out to be the perfect look. With black rubber gorilla masks over their heads, the Guerrilla Girls instantly turned themselves into modern masked avengers in the tradition of the Lone Ranger, Zorro, and Catwoman. The next morning, on the way to breakfast, I ambush my new visual artist friend at Jurassic. I explained to her that the Guerrilla Girls are exactly the kind of activist intervention that the theater world needs. I open Confessions of the Guerrilla Girls and blabber on and on about how the tactics of the girls might be used to attack the theater world. Then I ask her if she happens to know any Guerrilla Girls. She lowers her eyes and looks around. Yes, I do. You're looking at one. So thank you everyone for being here. That's how I came to meet a real-life Guerrilla Girl, and actually that's how I came to become a Guerrilla Girl, because I met one. So my name is Aphra Behn. I was born in 1640, and I think I look pretty good. Actually, that's not my real name, that's my Facebook name. No, it's actually my Facebook name and my Guerrilla Girl name. So Aphra Behn was a writer. She was the first woman to ever make a living as a writer in the United Kingdom. She wrote plays, poetry, and prose. She's known for her body material and her feminist themes. And she also wrote under several pseudonyms. So to me, she seemed to be the perfect name to take, because I was also a playwright, and I was also taking her name. So that's how I got the name Aphra Behn. I became a Guerrilla Girl in 1997, and a few years ago I started to think about my journey through life and how I came to become this feminist activist. And that was really the spark that led me to write my book, my memoir, and to go back and to try to figure out, why is it that I grew up to become this gorilla mask wearing Aphra Behn? And so at some point in my career as a Guerrilla Girl, and we used to say this in one of our performances, you know, I think it's kind of pathetic that I have to wear a gorilla mask and take the name of Aphra Behn to get anyone to pay attention to sexism. Because sexism is everywhere. It still is everywhere. And I will just give you a little quiz now. If February is Black History Month and March is Women's History Month, what do you think happens the rest of the year?
White Male History Month.
White Male History Month. That's a good answer. The one I was thinking of, though, begins with a duh and ends with discrimination. Discrimination, right? Discrimination. So as I began to think about this journey that I had as a radical feminist and think about how I got here, I remembered that it was actually a book that led me into identifying as a feminist. And so I went to SUNY Brockport for my undergraduate degree, and I'm going to read you now just a little section of the book of how I discovered feminism. One afternoon, I browsed the selections in the Main Street bookstore in downtown Brockport and picked up a copy of Our Bodies, Ourselves, first published in 1971 by the Boston Women's Health Book Collective and written for women seeking information about their health. In the book, I learned that the birth control pill can have very bad side effects for some women. I throw my pills away and research alternative methods of birth control. Our Bodies, Ourselves shoves me into feminism. I begin to examine my life with the filter of my gender firmly in front of all of the experiences I have ever had. What if I make it a point to live my life conscious of the filter of my gender? What will my life be like? Will I be able to harness the inner power of my sex and never again give myself away or let others determine who I am? The answer is as dull and as steady as a menstrual cramp. You bet I will. I am a feminist, that's it. Whatever happens to be will be what I choose to happen. Whatever I want, I will go out and get. The universe can step aside because I will be the creator of my world. I graduate, move to New York City, and for 6 weeks live hyper-aware of the inferior status my gender has placed me in and push against it with all my might. And then I meet Bill. Bill is an actor in New York City who I met in 1977 when I first moved to New York to become an actress. And Bill is William Hurt. And half of this book is about my relationship with him, which was a very violent relationship. And that relationship and that experience of surviving domestic violence also was a big part of why I became a Guerrilla Girl. And so I'm not going to read a lot about that in the book, but I did want to read one passage just to reflect a little bit about what it was like to be inside the middle of the cycle of violence. At one point in 1979, we were living in Los Angeles, and this is from that section. One night, just before I returned to New York City, I say something and immediately want to stop the words from coming out of my mouth. I did not mean to say what I said, because what I say flips a switch. He turns on me, chases me around the house, finally catches up to me and throws me to the ground. I put up my arms to protect myself from being slapped in the face and use my legs to kick him away. The bathroom remains the only place I know I will have a temporary reprieve because I can lock the door. The lock clicks just as I reach safety. He pounds on the door, demands I open it. I crouch down in the shower and scream at the top of my lungs for him to stop. He does stop briefly. I check the lock, make sure it is secure. Suddenly, he changes his mind, comes back to the door, and begins to use his shoulder against it like a battering ram. The screws and the hinges start to pull away from the frame. The wood of the door splinters as the screws and hinges pull out of the wall. The door flies forward, dislodges the shower curtain, and hits me on top of the head. He pushes the door aside, grabs me by one arm and one leg, and drags me out of the bathroom and into the hallway, where he is on top of me, slapping and punching and raging. And then, just as instantly as it began, he stands up and walks out of the house. I hear the car start in the driveway. It speeds away, and when all is silent, I pick myself up and wash my face. The moment you think it cannot get any worse, it does. 24 roses, making love in the gentlest and most delicate of ways. The words, don't leave me. The confession, I'm sorry. The myth, it will never happen again. I know I speak no words, do no actions that deserve a violent response, that no action merits physical abuse. Yet my identity is now all I have physically absorbed over the course of my relationship. I am what I have experienced. These are some of the Guerrilla Girls. We were given the Scout Egan Medal for outstanding merits in art making, and the girls came back to take a big photo and put their names in front of them. So, just going back to the trauma, I just want to say that it took me a very long time to even admit that I was a victim of domestic violence. It took me 14 years to even admit that, and then it took me 35 more years to write this book. I just want to say briefly that the process of disclosure is different for everyone. And when you hear people say, when you hear victims of violence, of domestic violence or sexual assault, and you hear people say, well, why did they come out now? Why are they coming out now? It's because it's a process, and it takes a long time for some people. And for others, they never come out of it because it's impossible. And I just want to say that I support all women and all women's stories, and however long it takes for them to come out, or if they choose not to tell them. And I write about that in the book. So I'm going to go on, and oops, I got ahead of myself a little bit. So these are the Guerrilla Girls. I just want to read now about another section about my first meeting as an official Guerrilla Girl. So after I met my friend at Gerasi, she invited me to join the group. She said that the group was taking new members because this was 1997. The girls started in 1985, and they wanted new members to revitalize the group. There was a lot of burnout, people were leaving, and they had been working for so long they needed some fresh blood. So there was a bunch of us that were invited to join the group, and I was one of them. I went to my first meeting, and we all introduced ourselves, and after that came another meeting the following month. The Guerrilla Girls used to meet every 28 days. Thank you. And this is what it was like for me at one of my first meetings, where I got to actually address what I wanted to address, which was sexism in the theater world. Oh, here it is. In early 1998, the Guerrilla Girls decide a weekend retreat might be the perfect way to weave the energy of the new members with the wisdom of the old. Rosalind Franklin offers to host it at her downtown loft. Handouts and agendas are copied and distributed, dotted with words like inspire and motivate. There are questionnaires to fill out, committees to join, and jobs to sign up for. Finally, Saturday morning arrives and future projects are up on the retreat agenda. In a circle of chairs, much like at my first meeting, the girls sit and voice their ideas. When it is my turn to present, I stand up and admit I know little about the current art world. Instead, I want to attack what I do know, the theater world. I open my notebook and read what I have come up with, an idea for a visual work. Taking the famous paragraph found in every theater program across the country, I twist the words to this. In this theater, the taking of photographs, the use of recording devices, and the production of plays by women are strictly prohibited. The management. During the 1997-98 season, this theater produced no plays by women, a public service message from the Guerrilla Girls. That's fantastic! Jane Bowles bangs her hands together and gestures for me to pass the mock-up of my poster down to her. Let's print it! Lorraine Hansberry reaches for the poster. This is great! This is really great! Gertrude Stein grins at me. Jane Bowles, how are you thinking of getting this out there? Me, stickers. How about we put them in the toilet stalls of all the theaters not producing any plays by women? Lorraine Hansberry, love it. Gertrude Stein, fabulous. Me, the Roundabout and the Atlantic are just a few of the companies not producing any plays by women this season. Jane Bowles, let's commit to completing this by the next meeting. All agreed. Just like the art world, the theater world needs us. Who else wants to attack the theater world? Lorraine Hansberry, I do. Gertrude Stein, so do I. Claude Cahoon, count me in. We print in this theater onto Avery labels, 6 to a page, and distribute it to the Guerrilla Girls interested in our new theater focus. In 1997-98, the Roundabout, Primary Stages, Signature Theater, the New Group, the Atlantic Theater Company, and George Street Playhouse are just some of the theaters producing main stage seasons of plays written entirely by white men. If the show is at 8, I arrive at 7:30 so I can go to the women's room. Inside a toilet stall, I slip my hand into my purse, slide out a sticker, and quietly rip the backing off so no one can hear me. As I hold the virgin sticker in my palm, I kick the flush bar and slap the sticker hard onto the wall of the stall at the same time. Take that, you sexist theater, you. With a huge grin on my face, I exit and make eye contact with the woman online about to enter the stall I am vacating. You are in for a treat. During intermission, I visit a different stall and put up another sticker. After the show, I make one last trip to install the final sticker. All of this happens while my sympathetic baboon boy escort stickers the men's room in much the same way. We call men who assist Guerrilla Girl actions baboon boys, and while they help us carry out our mission, they are not considered official members of the group. At least 3 stalls in both bathrooms will be plastered with the Guerrilla Girl public service message by the end of the show. The girls obtain tickets to plays produced by these theater companies, either by purchasing them with our own money or with funds from the Guerrilla Girls. The most subversive way we sticker is when we volunteer to usher in exchange for a complimentary ticket. As ushers, we openly distribute programs, help patrons find their seats, and secretly apply public service messages to the insides of the toilet stalls. As I participate in this first Guerrilla Girl theater action, I feel destructive, righteous, and omnipotent. A tremor goes through my core every time I slip the lock closed on a toilet stall and secretly smack another sticker into place. Each sticker is a monologue to a captive audience. Hey, theater goer, did you know you are supporting a company that produces no plays by women? They won't get away with it forever, not while the Guerrilla Girls are around. As each theater mounts a new production in their all-white male season, I return to the same bathroom stalls to continue the campaign. And I have to suppress the urge to scream out an ebullient cry of victory when I see the remains of the sticker I had put up 4 weeks ago, not completely scratched off. Hint, Avery labels are really hard to remove. So that was the first Guerrilla Girl theater action. And we focused on those it's amazing to think now, those theater companies that I read of, those New York City theater companies who are producing seasons of all plays by all men. Most of them have really changed their ways and no longer do that, with the exception of the Roundabout, who still continues to produce seasons of all plays by all men, or they'll put their female playwrights in their black box theater, not their main stage theater. So after we stickered around about 1997, 98, lo and behold, they announced their next season. And what happens? They include 2 plays by women. They included Mineola Twins by Paula Vogel and Impossible Marriage by Beth Henley. And they had not produced a play by a woman since 1986, for 12 years. So we immediately take complete credit for the change and we're really changing theater really quickly with these little stickers in the toilet stalls. People are really paying attention. Of course, the next season they went back to producing a season of all plays by white men. So it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But that was a great start. And the press started to pick up on the Guerrilla Girls theater actions because a lot of them called up us and said, we thought you weren't working anymore. We thought you were just doing visual art. Now you're doing theater. This is a brand new focus. We want to interview you. So we got some press. We were backstage. We were in the Village Voice. And people started to pay attention. This was at a time when, social media was not around. It was mainly communication through emails, and postering, like Guerrilla Girls used to do in the 80s, was no longer viable because, one, there weren't many places to put up posters anymore because of the way construction was happening in New York. There was a lot of security. Posters would get ripped down immediately. We also didn't want a poster in Soho because that wasn't the heart of the theater scene. Actually, Times Square was the heart of the theater scene, but that was an impossible place to sticker. So we had to think about new ways to get our message out. So another way that we thought of is by sending postcards, which the Guerrilla Girls had actually done in the 80s. So here's a postcard that we made. Dear theater producer, I noticed that last season you did not produce one play written by women. Written by a woman. I know that you are terribly embarrassed by your lack of familiarity with women playwrights and will rectify this oversight in your next season. Love. And then we addressed it to all the artistic directors of these theater companies that weren't producing women, and we put this in what was called a spy kit, a Guerrilla Girl spy kit. We were asked by the New Museum to participate in a show called Urban Encounters, and in that show, we sold these spy kits, which included tallies when you went to museums, and postcards like this, and this button on the Guerrilla Girl, and other things. So that was one way that we got involved. We also, as theater artists, we just used these visual works that the Guerrilla Girls made as kind of a third voice in a very performative way. So this is another postcard that we made. Know your theater lingo. Plot. White guy writes play, it gets produced. Subplot. Less than 18% of plays produced in the U.S. this season were written by women or people of color. Farce. Last season was just as bad. Tragedy, the lack of diversity in theater. A public service message from Guerrilla Girls, conscious of the theater world. Now, how do we get these stats? These stats are really easy to get. We do what we call the 5-minute research technique. You just needed to, at that time, open up the New York Times, go to the theater listings, and count the number of plays written by women that were being produced on Broadway. They used to also list off-Broadway listings. There were magazines. The Village Voice used to list listings, and it was very easy for us to get these stats. I mean, we never claimed to be statisticians, but it was very easy to see that all over the stat was pretty even, that it was less than 18%. It was around that. Of plays produced in the U.S. written by women or people of color. So we also tried to look for really bad stats, ones that were very egregious, because that was a way that we would get attention. Along with using humor. We always use humor as a weapon. We tried to make people laugh about the fact that discrimination was going on, because it's obvious that if you just stand up and say discrimination is bad and no one's going to listen to you. So when you get someone's attention by making them laugh, maybe you can make them think about what you're trying to say. And in the 52nd annual Tony Awards, were in 1998. In 52 years, not one woman had ever won a Tony for direction. 52 years. So that was a really bad stat. So another way that we got our message out is by taking out ads in magazines. And we took, there was a very popular theater magazine at the time called In Theater, and we took out this ad. Oops. That said, what do prestigious theater companies have in common? A, latecomers are seated at the discretion of the management. B, their 1997-98 seasons included no plays by women. C, both of the above. How many women have won a Tony for directing? A, 28, B, 3, C, 0. Since 1947, 50 plays have won the Tony. How many were written by women? A, women don't write plays suitable for Broadway. B, how can you be nominated if you aren't produced? C, 1.5. So that was the Guerrilla Girls Theater Quiz, and we put that in Theater magazine. So after we did this, the Tony Awards happened, and lo and behold, what happens? A woman wins Tony for directing a play, and a woman wins a Tony for directing a musical that very same year. So of course we took complete credit for that as well. With just one little ad helped change the face of the theater. But when that happens, then you have a stat, then your really bad stat no longer exists. So we had to figure out how to spin that. So this is how we spun it. Question, what do toilet stalls and the Tony Awards have in common? Answer, they only let in one woman at a time. Only one woman has ever won a Tony for directing a play, and only one woman has ever won a Tony for directing a musical. So that's how we skewed that. So why Broadway and why the Tonys? Well, if you want to look where the most sexism is, you have to look at the top, where people make most money, and that's Broadway. And where people make the most money is where you will find not so many women, people of color working. I mean, there are lots of theater artists out there. There are a lot of plays by women, there are a lot of playwrights, there are a lot of directors, there are a lot of people coming out of MFA programs and BFA programs. There are a lot of people writing plays. It's not that there aren't more plays by men than there are by women. There aren't, and so they're just working in the trenches. They're working off Broadway. So we try to use the Tonys as a way to say women aren't winning Tonys because women aren't working on Broadway, and they should be. Here's another poster that we made. There's a tragedy on Broadway, and it isn't Electra. Only 8% of the plays and less than 1% of the musicals on Broadway were written by women. Guerrilla Girls think that's even sadder than a Greek tragedy. There's only one explanation for what's currently playing: discrimination. And then, so this is an example of the way that the girls try to find. We've tried to find a way into the back end of an issue. We tried to find a way to skew the issue, to make people think about it in a new way, and using humor. Turning something bad into something good, celebrating the bad was another way that the Guerrilla Girls used to find a way to talk about the issue. And this is actually a takeoff on an early Guerrilla Girl poster called The Advantages of Being a Woman Artist. And this is called, Oh, the Joys of Being a Woman Playwright. You're in control. You produce your own plays because if you don't, they won't get produced. You're special. During Black History Month, or Women's History Month, your work receives at least one staged reading. You're hot. If you're under the age of 30, your career might last a few seasons. You save money. You don't have to buy evening gowns for all those award ceremonies. You live in the moment. No need to obsess about your place in theater history. You won't have one. You don't fear failure. Your breasts are the only things that will flop. 81% of all plays produced in the U.S. during the 1998-90 season were written by white men. So that's the way, this poster actually, the advantages of being a woman artist actually was the disadvantages of being a woman artist for many, many meetings of the Guerrilla Girls. And finally, somebody just said, well, let's turn it on its head and make the disadvantages be the advantages, and then people might think about it in a different way. So at this point, the Guerrilla Girls Theater Committee, which is what we called ourselves, was working for about 2 years, 1997, 98, 99, and we wanted to expand our work. We wanted to reach out. We wanted to get the community involved. So we thought, why don't we ask everyone we know to sticker the toilet stalls of theaters not producing any plays by women, or why don't we just ask the community? Why don't we ask the theater-going community to help us sticker the toilet stalls? So we printed up this Oh, the Joys of Being a Woman Playwright into these big 8.5 by 11 stickers, and we put a note on them that said, today we are asking you to help change American theater by going to the toilet. When you go to the theater, put up the sticker in the bathroom and help us flush out discrimination in New York City theater. Thank you for being a Guerrilla Girl or a Baboon Boy for a day. And we went to the TKTS booth in Times Square. And with bananas, we were giving out bananas, and we gave out our posters and our stickers, and we were asking people to do this. And unfortunately, everyone thought we were cast members from The Lion King. They thought we were giving out free tickets to The Lion King. They wanted to take pictures with us, cast members from The Lion King, and we said, no, 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 we aren't. We want you to put up the sticker, and they really weren't interested. Also, in those days, these Guerrilla masks, and this is my original Guerrilla mask, which is really falling apart right now. When we wore these Guerrilla masks, we were very, you couldn't see our facial expressions, and you also couldn't hear us, because this thing was covering our entire face. The theater girls eventually figured out a way for us to be more performative, and so we figured out these small half masks that just went over, that exposed our mouths. So that's what we ended up using in the end. So after the debacle of the TKTS booth and The Lion King, we said, well, let's just organize a big, huge protest, and we'll do it at the Tony Awards. So we will ask everyone we know to join us to protest the Tony Awards, using the Tony Awards to highlight the fact that women don't win Tonys because they don't work on Broadway. So because we wore those big rubber gorilla masks, and we knew we couldn't have a loud voice. We decided to collaborate with a group called the Art Cheerleaders. The Art Cheerleaders were Boston Art School students dedicated to heightening the connection between the arts and community interests through cheerleading. And here they are. And they were fabulous. They came up with some, old chants like, hey, hey, ho, ho, discrimination on Broadway's got to go. But then they also came up with some brand new chants. The Tony is baloney, because the system doesn't place value on the work of women. That is a disgrace. And they were super loud. They really had their act together. They rehearsed. Here's a picture of us all together. And you'll notice we sent out an email to everybody we knew to come join us on the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and we'll march on to the Tony Awards. And you'll notice that people had paper bag masks on. That's because we wanted everyone to be a Guerrilla Girl for a day. So we printed up these paper bags, which had a gorilla mask on the front, and I'm a Guerrilla Girl on the back. And there we went, off to Radio City, marching, and everyone was chanting, and it was really exciting. And you can see people started to film us and videotape us. And we also, to fit in with the awards theme and all of the evening gowns, we made these beautiful black capes that had our poster. There's a tragedy on Broadway, and it's an Electra on the back. And we started chanting in front of Radio City Music Hall, which is where the Tony Awards take place. The producer of the PBS segment of the Tony Awards actually came out, running out, wanted to know what we were doing, why we were protesting the Tony Awards. We tried to explain to him we're using the Tony Awards to highlight the fact that women are discriminated against in the theater. He was very mad. He didn't want to hear it. He ran back inside. The only person who actually ran up to us and wanted to know what we were all about was Alec Baldwin, who got out of his limo, ran up to us, took all of our information, and said he would look into it. Unfortunately, we never heard from him again, but it was great to have Alec Baldwin running towards you, and asking what it's all about. So there is a law that dates back to the Ku Klux Klan that says you cannot protest wearing a mask. The NYPD allowed us to protest and scream and yell for about an hour. And then someone else came over and said, you have to take your mask off or be arrested. And we didn't want to be arrested, so we left. We went to someone's apartment. We watched the Tony Awards. A lot of women happened to be nominated that season, but unfortunately nobody won, and it was very depressing. So again, we felt like change had happened, and then change wasn't happening anymore. The biggest frustration of all was the fact that at this time, in the late 90s, we were really the only people, the only group talking about sexism and gender parity in the theater world. We addressed the theater producers, the audience, the artists. We were interviewed in the papers, and there seemed to be absolutely very little change. And when there was a little change, then it would go back the next year. So it was very frustrating to be in a group where you're trying to affect change and nothing is really happening. So that protest was just the beginning of talking about gender parity theater, because now today I am really happy to report that there are a lot of groups that are talking about gender parity theater. There's a group called 50/50 in 2020, which wants 50% representation of women and artists of color by the year 2020. There's the LA Female Playwrights Initiative. There's the Dramatists Guild Women's Committee. There's organizations like Little Black Dress. There are women's festivals all over the place. And theaters like Primary Stages had entire seasons dedicated to plays by women and hiring women directors. So I am really happy to report that 20 years later, change is happening and people are aware. I'm lucky to have been a Guerrilla Girl. It's taken me all over the world, and I've gotten to meet some incredible people and have some incredible experiences. Like I got to meet Gloria Steinem, who was fabulous. Also, Yoko Ono gave us her Courage Award for the Arts. I got to tour to China, where I took a cooking class with a master chef. I got to perform with the only all-female kabuki troupe in Japan, which was an amazing experience. That's me on the left. I got to attend Obama's inauguration and help him with his swearing in. I got to propose an amendment to the health care reform bill. And I even got to have beer with the Pope. Actually, I stretched the truth in a few of those. I didn't really have beer with the Pope. I had vodka shots with the Pope. So make no mistake, I don't spend all of my time photoshopping myself into history. Sometimes I use Final Cut Pro. Anyway, I'm sure you can see that being a member of the Guerrilla Girls is challenging, but it's fun because we get to meet all kinds of people. And this is NYPD Officer Purcell, who is still he's a detective now, and he was actually great when we protested the Tonys in 1998. So, in summing up, I just want to say, how does one act like a feminist artist? What do we do? What are some of the tools that the Guerrilla Girls use that we can use in our everyday life? And the first one is gather ideas. Do the 10-minute research technique. Read the newspaper. Get some facts together. Call the evidence. Gather the ideas together. Think about what really makes you angry or what you would like to address that's happening now. And then the second thing, and this is really important, meet in small groups. The effectiveness of the theater committee in the Guerrilla Girls was because we were 4, 5, and 6 people meeting. We were not 10, 20, 30, 40. You can imagine how hard it is to collaborate on something with 30 people in the room. So split up into small groups. What we would do is theater is a very collaborative art, so we already had that going for us where we could talk and we knew how to give and take. So we would meet in these small groups, we would make a poster, we present it to the bigger group for a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And for the most part, everyone approved, liked what we were doing. So when you meet in small, the most important reason that you meet in small groups is because ideas develop slowly if kept inside one mind. Ideas develop slowly if kept inside one mind. You have to cross-talk and generate ideas and bounce things off of each other. The next thing you must always do is use humor. You have to use humor. You have to have fun. Being an activist can be extremely frustrating. A lot of things happening now make people very, very angry. And that's a good thing, but there's also a time to have fun. So when you meet in small groups, make sure you have cookies and chocolate and wine. And the last thing is, tell a story. You're not working on an issue. You're telling a story. You have a personal connection to all of these issues that affect you. Everything is affecting you personally. Tell your personal story of how it's affecting you and what your story is in relation to your issue. People are more likely to listen to a story from you than just spouting facts or things that you're mad about. Let the world know what the big picture is. How do women, how do feminists, how do activists fit into it? What is your place in the world? And the last thing is you have to remain positive. I want to say to everyone in the room, whatever you're thinking now, whatever upsets you, we got this. You have to remain positive, especially today. So artists are the truth tellers. We are all artists in this room in some way or another. And we tell the truth. That's our job, to reflect back the truth to the world. And that's easy to do, right? We got to just keep telling the truth because we have no choice. We live in the world of facts and reality. We love facts. We love reality. And we are going to keep reflecting that. We got this. I'm going to do one last reading from my book. People say that when you write a memoir, you learn something about yourself that you never knew before. I thought that was not the case until I actually discovered something about myself towards the end of writing this book. And I'm just going to close by thanking Carolyn and Sarah and New York Society Library for having me here, and you all for coming. I will be signing books. I'll be taking questions after I read this, so please stick around. This is what happened to me. Now, here's what I wrote. Even though courage and strength were gifted to me by my parents, by some divine being, I lost the ability to forgive myself. I defined myself by my relationship to others. Movie star's girlfriend, formerly battered woman, heroine savior of women in theater. All the potential for a brilliant life vanished when, at the age of 23, I moved to New York City, got a job waiting tables in Greenwich Village, and put my life on hold. How could I have messed up so much? For a long, long time, I did not stop thinking, what if, what if, what if? What if I never met Bill? I would have become a success. What if I had not been battered? I would have become a success. What if I had not spent so much time as an advocate for other artists? I would have become a success. I missed out on becoming the person I should have become. This permeated my thoughts every day, consuming me with regret for the one very wrong choice that resulted in a life lived in fear of making more mistakes. I waited and waited and waited to make a lot of money, garner recognition, and be an artist. Until my artistic output was heard, seen, experienced by many, I was a failure. Until I achieved it, I remained a nameless nobody. And Aphra Behn saved me. Creative and funny, strong and intrepid, Aphra Behn fearlessly co-opted a name and an identity and ventured out to create change. Aphra Behn made mistakes, forgave herself, and moved on. Aphra Behn was a success because her gorilla mask protected her from ever measuring herself against the world. Success, what is it really? But the ability to crawl out of the era of low self-esteem and never go back. Getting cast in a theater production or a movie or having my play produced does not make me an artist. Art is in me, lives in my soul. The vibration inside fights a way out to make stuff up. Nobody has to buy this stuff, this art, or look at it, or produce it. It is art because I am an artist and I made it up. If it is the truest stuff I can make, it is a success. Not to say that getting money for your art is not okay. It is, but it is no longer the criterion by which I identify myself as an artist. I have been a woman with no identity and a woman with a fake identity. From nameless girlfriend of somebody famous to a gorilla mask activist, I am ready to unmask. I am Donna Kaz. I am Aphra Behn. I am an artist, an activist, and a survivor. I am gender parity and feminism and humor. I am theater and I am comedy and I am perfect rhythm and I am talent. I am success. I am a success. With all my secrets revealed, I go forward without a barrier between me and the world. I take complete responsibility for every part of my amazing life, everything that has ever happened to me, all of it sewn together now, rough seams and all. The clouds move one way above me, and the earth moves another way below me. I am at the center of it all. My story is at the end of a pencil poised over an empty page. I picked the pencil up and wrote. Thank you very much. Whoever asks a question gets a banana. Okay, no one's hungry, come on. Dinner time. Anyone have, yeah?
Are you still involved with the Guerrilla Girls, or are
Yes.
they still in existence?
Yes, the Guerrilla Girls, in 2001, the Guerrilla Girls split into 3 groups. Just because there was a lot of area to cover, and the theater girls really wanted to pursue becoming more like a theater company. And so we split into Guerrilla Girls On Tour, which is the theater. we split into Guerrilla Girls Broadband, which is a group of women who are doing interactive activism on the internet. And Guerrilla Girls Inc. still does the visual art world. And here's your banana. Okay. Yes.
I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about the selection of your particular issues, or how you felt that this was your calling to do feminism and to focus particularly on feminist issues in the theater. And I say this particularly because I feel like, to put it simply, as soon as you get interested in one social justice topic, you join one email list, you like one page on Facebook, you get 10,000 more things that essentially say, you like that? This is much more important.
Yeah.
How can you be wasting all your time thinking about that when actually we're all going to die because of this? Et cetera, et cetera.
No, and that,
piles and piles and piles. There's this endless sort of introduction of new ideas, distraction, and also sort of guilt tripping from everybody else as soon as you feel like, no, that's your thing.
Yeah. No, the way that we decided what to focus on was within the small group. And then when we would go around and present these things, because Guerrilla Girls on Tour ended up creating performances that toured the world. And in these performances, we would talk about the things that the successes and the failures and all the posters that you just saw. We would get people stand up in the audience and go, well, how come you're not addressing women in music? And I would go, because you should be addressing women in music. I mean, we can't do everything. And we're trying to inspire everyone to become active and to identify as activists. That's why I brought up the small group thing, because there are a lot of things to join right now. There's a great website, Indivisible, which is a bunch of staffers on Capitol Hill came up with this whole concept of how to contact your Congress people and make them accountable for what they're doing in Congress. And they say small groups. Now, I think you can join a listserv and you can clicking is good, and all that is good, but we have to go beyond that now, which is why I say contact your neighbor or your friend and meet once a month with 5, 6 people and decide what you want and have an agenda and do your activism that night. That very specific activism, whether it's calling or that afternoon or emailing or whatever, and collaborate, trade off on the issues that you want to address. That way you'll really feel like you're really concentrating on something instead of, I mean, I don't know where to start. You know, I mean, that's a lot of people's feelings these days is, I can't keep up, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to focus on. And I say, do what you can, but really try to form a group. Try to form a small group. And each person will have a month to bring up what they want to address. And really focus on that. And I think it's very fulfilling to do that too, because then you really feel like you're doing something. Instead of clicking around the internet, which I'm not against that, and signing petitions and stuff. I mean, we're all signing like a gazillion petitions a day. But, you know, is that really helping? What are we doing? Also, you know, get out and protest. There's, you know, the march was great. There's more marches coming. And this is the other thing. We have to always, we're all targets. We have to march with everyone. We have to march with Black Lives Matter. We have to march with the LGBT community. We have to march with the Muslim community. We have to all stick together, and we have to all show up. And we all have to support each other. Otherwise, it becomes these fractions, these divided fractions. And now we're seeing that divided fractions are not so good. And here's your banana.
I will totally take that banana.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? I know you do. Comments? Yes.
If I understand what you just explained and went through correctly, the ideas that you mentioned, the 5 ideas, are applicable to any of the arts.
Right.
Fine arts, painting, ceramics,
Right.
any art group.
Mm-hmm.
This,
Yes.
this model will work.
Yes. address in here, and I won't send you a lot of emails, believe me. Oh, one more question, yes.
How does one get involved with the Guerrilla Girls?
How does one get involved with the Guerrilla Girls? Well, see, there's bad news and good news. Bad news is that you can't, but the good news is you can form your own group. You can form your own group and make a new group, and it's time for it is time for new groups to happen, you know. And I encourage you all to do that. Yes?
What are you working on right now?
What am I working on right now? I'm working on a bunch of things. I've written a bunch of essays. I'm trying to write, this is like the standard answer for any memoirist, is like, now I'm writing a novel, of course, you know, enough with the going back into the journals. But I'm working on a play, I'm working on a musical, I'm just working on a lot of writing. But I'm really trying to focus on writing some short essays, which I've never really done before. Okay, thank you so much.